Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women Run the Workforce, a partner event by Girls for Business and Girls Unite for Defense. I'm Rachel Wang, and I am the founder and executive director of Girls for Business. And I'll pass it over to Sophia.
Hi guys, I'm Sophia. I'm one of the co-founders and co-directors of operations here at Girls for Business, and thank you all so much for joining us today. But yeah, passing it on to Sanjana.
Hi everyone, I'm Sanjana and I'm a co-founder of Girls Unite for Defense. A special thank you to our wonderful panelists, Ms. Maggie Nelson and Ms. Kushi Afre, for speaking today. I'll pass it on to Anusha and Sophie, the hosts of today's event.
Hi everyone, I'm Anusha and I'm a co-founder and marketing director at Girls Unite for Defense.
Hi guys, I'm Sophie Lee and I'm a co-director of outreach at Girls for Business. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today and we're so excited to see everybody. I hope you guys have been having an amazing weekend. And just so we know who's here and to warm up for today's event, if you guys could please type your name, grade, and where you're from in the chat. I am a senior in high school from Georgia. So yeah, we'll wait a few seconds for responses to trickle in. Perfect. And yeah, we just want to thank you guys for showing up on this Sunday night if you're on the East Coast. We know it's a little bit late, but we are so glad to have you here. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Anusha to introduce our event.
Yeah, thank you. So at today's Women Run the Workforce event, we hope to educate and inspire all middle and high school girls, share the unique experiences of women pursuing business, and empower girls to feel confident entering the workforce. We have invited two amazing panelists today who are highly experienced in business, and they will be sharing with you their exclusive advice and experiences on being a confident woman in the workforce. And now I'll pass it on to Sophia for going through the rundown of today's event.
Yep. So on the next slide, we will show a full rundown of today's event structure. First, we'll briefly introduce our organizations and share our initiatives with you all. And then our wonderful panelists will then introduce themselves and share their general business experiences. And then after that, we will transition into our group discussion and Q&A session, where you guys will get the chance to ask Maggie and Kushi your own questions about being a woman in the workforce. And then lastly, we'll wrap up our event with the group photo and some closing remarks. So on the next slide, I will introduce a little bit more about Girls for Business and what we do. So Girls for Business is a student-led nonprofit organization that is dedicated to empowering middle and high school girls interested in exploring business career pathways. Established in June 2020 and run by a team of over 100 members, Girls for Business has impacted thousands of girls worldwide through its platforms. By providing free mentorship programs, business news, educational virtual events like this one, and engaging resources, our team hopes to create a platform where girls can find business guidance and establish strong connections with like-minded young women. On the next slide, we will show Girls for Business's 3 educational programs. We have our business mentorship program, our business resource program, and our business networking program. These are some of the stats for all of our programs and our teams. So the business mentorship program has provided free business mentorship to over 130 student mentees. With our 3rd cycle ongoing, our resource program has released over 40 biweekly business newsletters with educational resources and business news. And lastly, our community platforms have also connected over 3,500 girls from 30 countries across the globe. Now, I'm so excited to pass it to Anusha to introduce Girls Unite for Defense.
Thank you. So now we'll be talking a little bit about Girls Unite for Defense. So, Girls Unite for Defense, or GOOD for short, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that aims to empower young females through self, cyber, and legal defense techniques in order to more effectively empower young females to handle uncomfortable situations. GOOD's initiative began in 2021 and has organized several events and workshops like this one over the past year and has reached girls from all over the East Coast and out of country. We have over 100 members and have reached internationally to places like Nigeria. We currently have a club system in which we do bi-weekly meetings that split between self-defense and cyber defense. Every month, girls go to a martial arts studio and train under a professional MMA fighter on how to effectively handle and de-escalate situations. We also have a community platform in our Slack channel to create a communication funnel for girls from different parts, just to interact with other girls that want to talk about something or someone or a situation that has happened to them. We can also share general information about opportunities and other events. Lastly, we are implementing a youth in defense program in which high school girls that have martial arts skills can train younger girls from ages 6 to 10 in simple defense techniques. And
Perfect.
now I'll pass it on. Yep, go ahead. I'll pass it on to Sophie.
Thank you, Anusha. So today you guys will be hearing from Miss Maggie Nelson and Miss Kushi Afre, our panelists for this event. They will be introducing themselves now and sharing their general business experiences a little more in depth so you guys can all get to know them. So now, without further ado, I will pass it over to Maggie. Take it away.
Hi, good evening, everybody. If you're on the East Coast, thanks so much for joining us. My name is Maggie Nelson. I am a recent University of Delaware grad. I graduated in May. If you're from Delaware, I went to AI DuPont for high school. And now I have the honor and the privilege of running the Diamond Challenge for University of Delaware's Horn Entrepreneurship. The Diamond Challenge is our global high school entrepreneurial pitch competition. We have over 200 countries a year participate through a 10-month cycle, which leads to students who are in the finals coming to the University of Delaware for 3 days for our annual summit. I also, during my school experience, participated in the Siegfried Entrepreneurial Leadership Fellows Program, where I founded my own startup, which is called Kindness Always Wins, which focuses on chronic illness and mental health in young adults. And I am so excited to be here tonight. I think this is such an important topic for really anyone, but especially women, to realize and know how to navigate the workforce. I think this is something that I wish that I had when I was entering the workforce, which was 4 months ago. But it is such an important topic to know how to be confident in yourself, to have that self-actualization when you're doing your work, finding your passion, and really letting your strength and experience speak for itself. So thank you all so much for letting me be here tonight.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Now I'd like to pass it off to Kushi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kushi Afre. I have not graduated college yet. I'm currently a second year studying business administration at Georgia Tech. I'm concentrating in finance and also double minoring in computer science and in French. My interests kind of span across a couple different fields. I've previously interned at Hot Sauce, a tech startup, and I'm currently interning at Tech Square Ventures, which is a venture capital firm, and Leland, which is a startup in the expertise economy. Next summer, I'll be interning with Goldman Sachs.
Perfect. Thank you, Kushi. So we'll now be transitioning to our Q&A discussion. We can go ahead and end the screen share now so we can see everyone in the room. But yeah, we'll first be starting off with some of our most frequently asked questions from the RSVP form, and then we will open the floor up for live questions. If you come up with any questions during the event, though, you can go ahead and type them into the chat and we'll answer them too. Panelists, if any questions speak to you particularly, please feel free to chime in first, and you guys can just bounce off of each other if you have more to add on. So yeah, I'll pass it back to Anusha to start off with our questions.
Yep, thank you. So the first question that we have for you guys is how do you build self-confidence being a woman in business?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. And I apologize for my camera being green. I'm not sure what happened there. But I think that one of the main things to keep in sort of mind is that you are just as capable as anyone else in the room. There's been often times where, as a woman in finance, I've been in a room that is majority male. For example, I'm part of the investments committee here at Georgia Tech. It's a club that has about 109 members, of which only 5 are girls. And so at the majority of our meetings, it's usually just like a couple of the girls and in an auditorium full of guys. And I think that being in situations like that really hurts your confidence sometimes, because when you look around you and you don't see people that look like you, i.e. other women, it's hard for you to kind of fit in or feel comfortable. And I think that one thing that I always sort of keep in mind is that I should always look beyond just like the general gender roles in a workplace and look kind of to merit and things like that. I think that at the end of the day, if you know that you are confident in your skills and your abilities, as well as your passions and the reasons for why you are in the environments that you put yourself into, then that should always take precedent over kind of any insecurities you may have just based off of not being a male in a primarily male dominated field or career.
And kind of building off of that, I think for the most part, especially being a recent grad coming out into the workforce, I've looked at my experience or lack of experience as a detriment, when in reality, it's a strength, because I bring a new, fresh perspective to an organization that's been operated for many years, and they've done things in their traditional way. And I look, when I'm sitting in staff meetings or at board meetings, I'm the youngest one there, and I'm also a woman in a room full of men most of the time. So I'm a young woman in a room full of male leadership. And a lot of the time that can be a big, big confidence drag. But I also look at the position that I'm in as I was chosen to be in this position. And I was chosen through an interview process, a pretty extensive interview process, that I bring something to the table. So really, what I encourage all of you to do is recognize that you bring something to the table, whether that's your experience in one area or your lack of experience in an area. All of your lived experiences are what make you, you really. And acknowledging that and celebrating that, rather than looking at that as, well, I don't have the experience that that person has. You bring your own unique experience to the situation. And that, thinking of it in that mindset and sort of flipping the script, has really helped me in the past 4 months during this transition phase of school into the workforce, recognize that you have value. You have value as a young woman in the workforce, as a recent grad, but even now where you are in high school, you have those experiences that lend themselves to any situation that you're in, and they should be seen as a strength.
Thank you, Kushi and Maggie. I think that's some great advice to let us know that we can feel validated as women in the workforce, and that where we stand is important. So on to our next question from the RSVP form. We got a good couple of questions asking about what are some important leadership skills to have as you enter the workforce, and how do you hone those skills?
I think that based off of my personal experiences, the ability to get along with the people that you work with has so much importance to it that sometimes extends beyond even like the technical skills that you may need in order to do a job. For example, I think that having a good connection or sort of network of people in a workplace will always help you, in the sense that you'll have a support system when it comes to doing work that you may not be familiar with. You have people to support you if you feel kind of like you can't do your work, or overwhelmed or confused as to the assignments that have been given to you. And I think that one of the biggest parts of building that interpersonal network is to kind of, and this sounds a little bit corny, but to always have a smile on your face, to always be in that sort of positive attitude, because I feel like I can't stress enough the value of having friends in places, in sort of professional places, because that takes you a long ways in terms of like small things like finishing your work, and also bigger things like gaining promotions and things like that. I guess an example that I can give is that at one of the internships that I'm currently doing right now, the manager, or sort of the person that I directly work under, is taking a couple months off on paternity leave. And so theoretically that would result in the termination of my internship, because I no longer have sort of the person that I'm working under to supervise me. But because I had a pretty good relationship with the CEO of the startup, as well as a couple other managers at the startup, they were able to transfer me into a different team that I hadn't interviewed for, nor had I kind of displayed any interest for based off of my academic background or resume. But that was just sort of a way that, or sort of something I got just as a result of being good friends with the people at the firm and having good connections with the folks that I work with. So I feel like I can't stress that enough. And it's something that people often overlook because they focus on themselves or the work that they're doing. But having a good network of people, I think, is super valuable.
I would definitely say that having that network is one of the most important things you can have. Just looking at my own workplace situation and the other activities that I participated in as a student, I think I can safely and confidently say that I have such a supportive network around me with where I work now at Horn Entrepreneurship. And even though my team is mainly based of male leadership, there's an amazing group of women around me who, especially being the youngest in that organization, has given me that network to fall back on, even if I'm having just confidence issues that day. Running a meeting that I've never ran before, having to speak at a board meeting, having just to figure out how I work my Outlook, which was way different than Gmail. And I will confidently admit that I had no idea what I was doing. But having those people around you is such an important thing, because everyone has leadership skills. I am a firm believer in that. And I have leadership skills that my coworkers don't, and vice versa. So pulling their leadership skills, kind of emulating that where I want to be, really helps me improve upon just myself as a person, but also in the job that I do. How do I become 1% better every single day at the job that I do? By witnessing those leadership skills from my coworkers and having that network and having that relationship with them. That is such an important skill, and I really can't stress it enough.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for going into detail about your experiences and sharing your tips and advice about networking. So another question that we got relating to leadership is, how do you assert yourself strategically being a female leader without coming off as bossy or cold?
I think that's a really great question. That's something that I'm working on myself. I think that a lot of the times, if you're the only woman in an environment, then when you come off as being assertive, that can come off as negatively, because like obviously women and men express like assertiveness in different ways. I think one thing that I do and sort of remind myself of is to mirror the same kind of energy that I'm seeing among my coworkers. For example, both of my internships use Slack, and I think that a trap that I fall into a lot on Slack is using an excessive amount of exclamation points or smiley faces or emojis, things like that, to make my messages seem a little bit friendlier or nicer. And I think that sometimes like that is necessary, and sometimes it's fine that you're doing that, but a lot of the times it comes off as like overly kind, or it puts yourself in a position where people feel that you are naive, or someone that is okay to be kind of walked over because you perceive, or you seem like you are perceived as kind of younger or more naive by your usage of like overly optimistic language or syntax and things like that. So one thing I try to keep in mind is to kind of mirror the same sort of energy that I'm seeing. So if I'm like Slack messaging my manager, he's obviously going to be using periods and commas and things like that. And it's something that's really small, but I think that plays into factor of, or it kind of takes into account how people perceive you, especially because nowadays I feel like a lot of working environments are virtual with COVID-19 happening and hybrid workplaces becoming a lot more common. And so having kind of attentiveness to how you are perceived in a virtual setting, i.e. how you communicate on platforms like Slack or Discord or whatever your company may use, is something that is important, I think, to assert yourself as someone that is to be taken seriously, and not someone that is like overly optimistic or naive or something like that.
This is something right off the bat that I have struggled with, especially being the youngest of my coworkers and being the youngest on my team, and also being a high energy person, as a lot of people as well as myself have named me. I own that. I am confident in that, but it sometimes can backfire as me coming across as overly nice and people pleasing, and has gotten me into some situations that I wasn't necessarily happy with. But as I've learned through that supportive network of my coworkers and looking at their leadership skills, I think a lot of me coming across as bossy or cold has kind of gone away by way of me being confident and giving the explanation of why I'm doing something. As I learned through feedback from my supervisor and my manager, when you explain things, explain your reasoning behind a decision. I had to make multiple decisions over the summer that I had to be entirely confident in. And if I had just sent my email with, "We're going with this decision," with a smiley face emoji, as I do with a lot of communication between me and my coworkers, I found it was helpful to write out the reasoning for why I chose that decision. I made this decision because of X reason based on X amount of data that I've found, which shows that I can kind of, I like to use this analogy, walk the walk and not just talk the talk, because unfortunately in some situations, you do need to provide that extra data and that extra explanation in order to be taken seriously. And that's something that I've encountered. I did notice in the chat, and I'm sorry if I'm veering off here, as far as being the youngest of my coworkers, that I think has really impacted me in my workplace, because I've had to provide that extra information and that extra explanation of why I'm doing something, because I can come off as fun and energetic all day long, but I also want to be seen as someone who knows what they're doing and knows, for the most part, because everyone is still learning, I'm still learning, my manager is still learning, but I can provide that explanation to show that I've done the background research and I am really confident in my decision. So that's helped me a little bit as far as coming off as bossy and cold, but like Kushi explained, it does help to look at how other people are communicating. I communicate differently with my other team member than I do communicating with my supervisor. That's just the nature of the game. I'm not going to address him with 5 exclamation points and like a emoji. That's just not the nature of our relationship. But keeping things light and fun is something that I try to do as much as I can in my life, because I believe, what's the fun in life if we don't keep things light? But also noticing the small communication cues for each situation can help with coming across as assertive or bossy, when in reality you are being confident, but just working those situations in your favor.
Thank you guys both for sharing your tips on that. I think, like Kushi said, mirroring your coworkers or your bosses' attitude on like communication platforms, and then also what Maggie said about going that extra step to provide more evidence or reasoning. to assert yourself, but also not come across as too bossy. Like all of that is really important for us to know as we are going to be entering the workforce in a couple of years. So I'd like to move it on to another question, kind of based more on like challenges you faced. Have you guys faced like a biggest problem in the workplace because you are a woman, and kind of how did you overcome that problem?
I think that a problem that I face sometimes that I never really saw myself facing in professional settings is like the small talk problem. Kind of this ties back into what I said earlier about having good relationships with your coworkers and your supervisors taking you a really long way. I think an aspect, or maybe even the biggest aspect of having these good relationships with the people that you work with, comes down to things like small talk and being able to connect at the level of beyond just work related things. And sometimes when you're the only woman in a room or the only woman in like a group of people that are chatting, the conversations might steer to something that you might not have as much familiarity with, like sports or something like that. And if you watch sports, kudos to you. But I personally do not. And I find myself in environments or in conversations in group settings where I'm the only woman in a group of guys. It's usually some sort of finance related event by the nature of that industry. And they might be talking about something like sports or something else that I might not be able to directly kind of add to. And I think that those are small challenges that I face that impact my ability to connect with the people that I'm with and to be an active part of the conversation that I'm engaged in. And it's beyond just sports, it's like a plethora of different topics. And I think that being the only woman in a group of people makes it a little bit hard for you to always be contributive to topics that people might be talking about. I think that one thing that I keep in mind is that like these conversation topics kind of happen by chance or by nature. It's not usually something that people are trying to do in such a way to exclude you from a conversation, if that makes sense. And the best way to kind of be personable and always be part of the conversation that is occurring in a group setting is to make yourself appear as friendly, appear as confident, appear as someone that people would like to engage in conversation with. So when you have like nerves or an issue with confidence or insecurity, that adds a lot of intensity to situations that can oftentimes make you appear as hostile or someone that wouldn't be open to engaging in conversation. So constantly reminding myself to kind of have a smile on my face and that I should take out some of the intensity that comes with these environments where I might be the only woman allows for myself to be a little bit more open and personable and kind of open to conversation and things like that. And so the small talk problem is something that you probably don't think of immediately as like a workplace challenge, but something that I've faced quite often. And I've been in that awkward situation where people are talking about something that I have absolutely no kind of interest, or not necessarily interest, but experience in. And so kind of taking a step back and putting yourself forward as someone that is willing to engage in conversation, that is trying to bring in new topics and things like that, I think is something that I've done to alleviate that problem and not be in those awkward situations.
I think the biggest problem I've encountered has definitely centered around emotions. And in a lot of workplaces I've been in, but especially now coming in post-grad to the workplace, emotions are, they're everywhere. And a lot of the time, especially with male leadership, you can be seen as dramatic, as overly emotional, as just wanting attention or not being able to handle the situation. And I think for me, managing those emotions, managing my own emotions due to my passion of the work that I do has been a challenge, but also something that is needed because we shouldn't have to feel like we have to mask our emotions in the workplace. I think a lot of the time we're seen just as you should complete your work and you should go home and there should be no emotions invested in your work. But that's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you are so passionate about your work. And I think a lot of the time for me being seen, and this plays again into the youngest person on my team and also the youngest woman on my team, I've been seen in some lights as not being able to handle my emotions, not being able, not being adult enough or mature enough, when in actuality, that's not always the case. So I think a lot of that for me plays back to just my network that I have around me, my network of successful women who are on my team, who I've watched navigate these situations where they're just seen as another emotional woman in the room. And really making sure that you go in, I think, as prepared as you can to anything helps with that emotional response, but also owning that emotional response, owning that you are passionate about your work, owning that you care, and you wouldn't necessarily have this response if you didn't care. That's what I've explained time and time again. If I didn't care about my work, I wouldn't get so passionate. I wouldn't get so worked up. And what I mean by that is when you have such a passion and a desire to do well and to do your job well, or to do your startup or whatever it is that you're working on, emotions do play a factor. But in order to not be seen as the over emotional woman in the workforce, I've had to, yes, dial that back, but also channel it into different ways. So channeling it into putting my effort into making this program the best that it can be, and not sitting down and beating myself up over what I did or didn't do, or writing an email that's profusely apologizing when I don't need to profusely apologize. That is something that I feel a lot of women have been conditioned to do, is profusely apologize when there may not be a situation where we need to. And so really taking that and owning my confidence and my confident decisions, like I spoke about earlier, having that explanation, that data to prove that I'm confident in my decision, keeps me from over apologizing in emails, keeps me from stumbling over my words because I'm so nervous during a meeting because I'm the only woman in a room. I know my stuff. And I think having that confidence that you do know what you're doing, and making sure that you feel like you can take up space, because you can. Your emotions are valid, your lived experience is valid, and you are allowed to take up space, regardless of what work space that you're in. You take up space. That is the biggest thing that my coworkers have told me, what I've had to tell myself, and what I've learned through the past 4 months of being in the workforce, is that you are allowed to take up space.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing. I think Kushi, your experiences with small talk, and Maggie, your experience with fighting against stereotypes for women is relatable to many of us, and even me personally, who outside the workforce face these situations with others. So it is very helpful advice to hear. Thank you so much. So the next question is a little more about specifically confidence. So how do you guys draw the line at self-confidence versus overconfidence?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think that being humble in every single environment that you put yourself into is extremely important, no matter kind of what you've achieved or kind of what your position might be in that space. I think that one of the biggest detriments to leadership that I've seen as someone that like has had to follow someone else is that the second that someone no longer appears to be humble, or the second that someone appears to have an ego, it makes it very difficult for me to respect them as someone that I'd like to be like, or someone that I might see in like a mentorship kind of setting. Because having an ego or not being humble about what you've achieved and sort of what you've done or where you're going or anything like that, kind of makes you appear as intimidating in a bad way. I think sometimes it could be good to be intimidating, but this is definitely not one of those things or instances. And I think that also kind of plays into your ability to connect with the people that you work with. Having an ego makes it very difficult for people to want to relate with you or want to kind of engage you in conversation, because there's always that risk of kind of of you being in the presence of someone that might be like overly boastful about themselves or kind of what they've achieved. So I think that always being humble, no matter where you are, no matter what your position is, whether you're the president of a club or just a member of a club, or kind of what you're doing with where you're going, is largely important.
And this is going to be a very similar answer, but just said in a different way. I think someone had told me this when I first started, but if you are the smartest person in a room, you are in the wrong room. And I think that has resonated with me a lot, because in almost every room that I've been in for the past 4 months, having started this job, I am not the smartest person in the room. And that to me is one of the best places you can be in life, is realizing that you don't know everything, and you come to learn through those experiences that pretty much everybody doesn't know everything. Even the person at the top of the pyramid who you think knows all about anything that you could want, they don't know. And I think being confident enough to do the work and to do the research that you need to do in order to make things happen, that is a crucial pillar of self-confidence, is knowing that you have that ability within yourself, but also recognizing that you don't have all the answers and you don't know everything. And it is okay. It is completely, completely okay. And I cannot stress this enough, to know everything. You don't need to know everything. And it is okay for you to say, I don't have an answer to that. But to take that and then learn and find that answer helps build your self-confidence, but not coming across as boastful or having an ego. I think one of the biggest things that happens, especially in entrepreneurial work, is you've built something, you've come here and with maybe limited resources and built something from the ground up. So you believe that you know it like the back of your hand. And that may be true, but there are still things that you don't know. So by removing your ego from that situation, you are free to know that you don't know everything. And that is one of the biggest things, I think, that has come to me, one, as being a recent grad in the workforce, and two, as a young woman, a young adult. I've felt the need sometimes in situations to have an answer for everything and to feel like I need to know absolutely everything, when in reality, that's not the case. And I've become actually more self-confident in giving that I don't know answer, that I don't know, but I can find out. That is the best advice I can give you, is I don't know, but I can find out. And that shows that you're not overconfident and you don't think that you hold all the answers, but you're confident enough in yourself and your abilities to find that answer.
Perfect. Thank you guys both for sharing your advice on that. I think those are some great tips to stay humble and not come across as overconfident, but still remain self-confident in what you know. So I'd like to circle back to one of the questions asked in the chat from before. It was related to building your network, like you both mentioned, is really important while entering the workforce. So Nancy had asked, how do you build a network and keep in contact with those people? How do you use your network to help you?
Yeah, I think about one of my favorite things ever to do, just in general, and especially when I start a new position or a new internship, is schedule coffee chats with people. I think that the value and the impact of coffee chats is super, super underrated, because it's an incredible way for you to get to know someone at a more personal level. I think that coffee chats are super easy also, because like it's a very general term, and it can either refer to like a 3-hour discussion at Starbucks with someone that like completely dissects your entire career and resume and gives you incredible advice, or it can even just be literally like a 10-minute phone call that doesn't even have video. Like there's such a span to coffee, like a span, yeah, to coffee chats that allows for you to use that term in a way that is flexible enough for you to kind of accommodate whoever you might be meeting with, whether it's maybe like a principal at a firm, or maybe it's just like another fellow intern. I also think that coffee chats are a great way for you to meet in an environment that isn't necessarily work related, which allows for you to kind of build or get to know that person at a more interpersonal level. I think that maybe meeting at a Starbucks or something local, like a cafe or a coffee shop on campus, is also like a much more comfortable environment than meeting in like the break room in an office or something like that. And yeah, I think that almost every successful thing that I've done ever in college can be attributed to some sort of advice that I've gotten in one of my coffee chats, because having coffee chats with people that are older than you and more experienced than you helps in so many ways. And there's also so much advice that people are willing to give to other people. Like personally, if someone like an underclassman was to ask me advice about classes or career, I'm more than happy to help someone out. It's just that I've just not always given the opportunity to kind of like help people out, or to kind of pass my experiences off to someone else. And so being in a coffee chat also allows for you to put the person that you're meeting with in a position to share their experiences and their wisdom. And more often than not, they're going to be more than happy to do so. And then also to help you out beyond that in terms of maybe like checking your resume with you, or giving you a referral for something, or connecting you with someone else that might be really helpful for you. So people are usually more than happy to help you, and scheduling a coffee chat with them, I think, is like the gateway to being able to access that kind of wisdom and experience that they're willing to share.
My response has two parts, and these are based on my own experiences, but also what I've learned in networking. First part is get to know everyone. There was something that was said to me when I first started my job this year at Horn Entrepreneurship, running the Diamond Challenge, being in a real corporate kind of world, and not knowing. I knew a few people from my time as a student, but schedule time with everyone who's on your team. That was told to me by one of my coworkers, and I made it a point to go out of my way to schedule. And just like what was said, 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be a 3-hour like deep dive, let's get into our lives kind of discussion. I mean, sometimes that does happen, and some of the best people I've met in my life, who I still talk to today, have come out of those 3-hour discussions. But really taking the time to get there and meet people and get into what makes you you, and what are your goals for your sector of business? How can you overlap with what I'm doing? How can we help each other? Just a casual discussion with a team member. And the second part to my response is, this is what I tell everyone who has ever helped me in some way: you will never be rid of me. I will not hunt you down and text you every day, but you will never be rid of me. There will be something that will happen down the road that I will stay in contact with you for. I will let you know. I will send you an update as to how this project is doing, or where I'm at in my life. And for an example, a lot of the opportunities I got in school was based on a connection that I had with a few of my professors who I was very, very close with. They helped me get my internship. They helped me get into the SELF program, which is the fellowship I was in junior year, and eventually helped write a recommendation for me to get the job at Horn. And really just keeping in contact with those people. And it doesn't need to be anything intense. Just, hey, how's it going? Haven't heard from you in a while. Wanted to update you on X, X, and X. Well, how's this project going? Like, and that can be as simple as, sometimes I just look at people's LinkedIns and notice, hey, they got a new job. There's a reach out to that person. Hey, congratulations on the new job. Here's where I'm at. Maybe let's talk. There are people who I have met my freshman year of college, professors and just community members as well, who I still talk to this day. I mean, we can go 6 months without talking to each other, but there's still always something to talk about. And that's why relationship building is so important. You build that initial relationship, but then you keep that relationship going through your updates, through your questions, through just your curiosity in general, picking that person's brain, picking someone's brain and not using it as taking advantage, but just using it as an opportunity to see another worldview, another life experience, especially being young, seeing people who have made it to wherever you want to be. And they've had that life experience and those ups and downs. Picking their brain is invaluable to where you can be in your career, in the workplace. If you want to start your own thing, whatever it is that you want to do, those people are crucial in your network.
Yeah, thank you guys for going into more detail on how to build a network. And I know I've learned that it's definitely important to take some time to get to know more people. So thank you for your advice. So another question that we had more related to challenges is, how do you guys handle disagreements or conflicts with coworkers or even supervisors?
Yeah, for sure. I think that obviously these are really uncomfortable situations, and it's not easy to navigate through them because there's the added pressure of kind of, maybe if it was a supervisor, the added pressure of being respectful while kind of expressing your difference in opinion or something like that. I think that one of the main things that I always keep in mind if I ever have a disagreement with someone, or if I'm in sort of a situation that has some sort of tension with someone, is to be extremely expressive and communicative about where I'm coming from and why I feel the way that I do. I think that almost every time that I have a strong emotion about something, whether it may be anger or disappointment or frustration or whatever it may be, there's almost always like a logical reason as to why. If I'm maybe frustrated at a coworker, it's might be because they and I, or maybe because we were supposed to be working on something together and they missed their deadline, or they weren't being responsive or something like that. There's always sort of a logical reason for why you feel the things that you do, and expressing the logical reason behind your emotions rather than just expressing your emotions, I think allows for any sort of disagreement or any sort of, not argument, but conversation about something that you might disagree about, be a little bit less like confrontational and intimidating and a lot more kind of constructive. I think that every single time that you talk about kind of your logical reasoning, it allows for that person to understand you more at sort of the personal level rather than just at the emotional level. And that's always really important when it comes to sorting out differences between you and someone else, or arguments between you and someone else, without having that tension kind of precede or like last beyond just that conversation itself. And so yeah, I think that focusing on the reasons behind your emotions rather than just your emotions is really, really important. And then obviously being like efficiently and effectively communicative about them.
I would say definitely building off of a lot of what Kushi just explained, but go approach situations through a lens of curiosity rather than just coming from a lens of emotion. So you are, again, allowed to have your emotions. Your emotions are completely valid, but especially in dealing with disagreements with supervisors, I know from my own experience that can be extremely frightening and extremely stressful, but really approaching that with a lens of, well, why are we looking at it this way? Could you give an explanation? Playing back to my earlier comment on providing the explanations and the data, that's so important, because a lot of the times, as I've witnessed, at least in my experiences, a lot of disagreements can be led back to communication. And that's why communication is so important. But looking through, whenever there's a disagreement, looking at it as, well, how can we make this better? How can we take this, whatever happened in the past has happened in the past, but how do we move forward? And how do we build this out this problem out through a lens of helping each other to be the best team that we can. Because at the end of the day, that is what I'm sure everyone wants, is to be the best, most efficient team they can be. So looking at it through, rather than a lens of hostility towards that coworker, supervisor, whoever you're having the disagreement with, and looking at it through a lens of curiosity, has helped me realize the motives behind people's actions and their emotions. And a lot of it really can be traced back to communication. That's why I tell everyone, over communicate. There's always something to be said about over communicating. And if you're over communicating too much, someone will let you know if you're emailing them 5 times a day, but it is always better to over communicate, because then you can be proactive in the situation instead of reactive. But that's not always how things play out. So when there is a situation where it's a reactive situation, approach it with curiosity, as in addition to whatever emotion you're feeling, but really lean into that curiosity.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for your advice. I know that this is super important because conflicts or disagreements are bound to happen, especially because of how difficult it is to handle in the professional setting. I think those are some great tips to help us know how to deal with those type of situations. So unfortunately, I think we are nearing the end of our event time. So we are going to have to conclude our general Q&A session. But if you guys have any more questions at all, we will have our panelists' contact info on the slides that we will be sharing later, so you can ask them, ask any other questions that you may have later. So before we finish wrapping up, we'd like to take a quick Zoom group photo. So if everyone could please turn your cameras on, we'll take 2 pictures. So I'll give everyone a second to get ready. Okay, and then I will count to 3 twice. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and one more time, if you guys want to do, maybe we can do like a little heart or something. We can do a little fun photo. Yeah. All right. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you, guys. So Girls for Business and Girls Unite for Defense will be posting event recaps on our Instagrams, LinkedIn's, and other platforms. So stay tuned for all of our social media info in just a bit. We will go ahead and start screen sharing again and wrap up with some last minute information.
Yep, so thank you, Maggie and Kushi, for putting your information in the chat. We also have more contact information about them on the slide here, so you guys can reach out to them via email or connect with them on LinkedIn. So you can feel free to take a picture of this slide. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to take a picture. And shortly, I'll be dropping a link to our event feedback form in the chat. So this form takes just 1 to 2 minutes to complete, and we'd really appreciate any feedback you guys have from today to make sure that future Girls for Business and Girls Unite for Defense events can be even better. So the link was just dropped in the chat. So go ahead and take a couple of minutes to complete that, either now or after the meeting.
Okay, perfect. And then moving on to the next slide, I'll be wrapping up with the little Girls for Business plug. Be sure to follow us on all of our socials to stay updated with our GFB content. For more content on the latest business news and helpful business tips, check out our other socials at Girls for Business on Instagram, LinkedIn, and our website at Girls for Business and girlsforbusiness.org. As I mentioned earlier, event recaps will be posted on all of these platforms for GFB. And for everyone currently attending, if you'd like to be tagged in the Instagram post, feel free to leave your Instagram handle in the chat right now, and you guys can connect with others from this call too. I'll give everyone a moment to message their usernames if you'd like to. And we know that this slide does include a lot of links and account profiles, so be sure to take a picture to refer back to it later. And I will pass it back to Anusha to do a quick Girls Unite for Defense plug.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of Girls Unite for Defense, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. For more information on upcoming events, workshops, and programs, check out our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Girls Unite for Defense. Our website is girlsunitefordefense.org, and you can also join our community Slack channel using the link on this slide. And as Sophie mentioned, be sure to take a picture of the slide for future reference if necessary. And now I'll pass it back to Sophie to go into more detail about Girls for Business.
Thank you, Anusha. So finally, if you'd like to get involved with the GFB community, here are some of the ways that you can. To access all of these links, please take a picture of the slide here to scan the QR code. So as a middle or high school student, you can apply to become a mentee with GFB. Mentees will receive one-to-one mentorship from a business college student or business professional over the course of 10 weeks. Mentee applications for the GFB mentorship program are open year-round, and the application link is listed on the screen. You can also subscribe to our mailing list to receive newsletters featuring the latest news in business, career tips, and business opportunities. You can scan that QR code to join our mailing list too. Additionally, you can join our team at Girls for Business. We are currently accepting applications for team roles, and we would love to work with you guys in the future. The application links are listed on the screen, and because I am an outreach director at GFB, I'd love to say that we do have spots on our team too, and we would love for any of you guys to join us. And lastly, you can also join our community Slack to network with girls with similar interests and also build connections with girls all over the world. The invitation to join is in the bottom left-hand corner of this slide. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to just read through everything that's on the slide, and you can take a picture for later too. Okay, perfect. And now I'll pass it back to Anusha.
Thank you. So here's some information on how to get involved with Girls Unite for Defense. So first, you can begin a good chapter at your high school by filling out a short application and providing us some information. Clubs are run based on your schedules, but all of the necessary materials and lessons will be shared by the board. Secondly, we're also searching for interns who will work as part of our board leadership team and assist them in weekly activities. The application for these roles is accessible through the link on the slides presentation for both the marketing and programming team. Lastly, you can join our community Slack channels for continuous updates or follow our socials to learn more about upcoming events to participate in. So now I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to take a picture of the slides if you want to save the information. Okay, awesome. So now I'll pass it back to Sophie with closing remarks.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end of our Women Run the Workforce event. Thank you so much, Maggie and Kushi, for coming out today and sharing your business experiences and just tips on being empowered, confident women in the workforce. We've truly learned so much from you guys, and we just thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak at our event. Additionally, a huge thank you to all of our participants for taking the time to attend this event. We also appreciate you guys just coming, and we know hopefully that you've learned a lot from Maggie and Kushi.
Yeah, and if you guys have any additional questions or suggestions for Girls Unite for Defense or Girls for Business, please feel free to stay behind for a few minutes, and we'd love to chat with you guys. For everyone else, I hope you all had an amazing time today, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend.